Lord. Before I begin, I want to do a disclaimer. This morning, I had a busy week all week. My club was doing a bean supper. We had to make pies and cornbread. I had to do a lot of running around. It was just, work was busy. It was a busy week. So my sermon, I was reading books here and there, stopping and going. And I like to read stories and books and things to get ready. And Friday night, serving this bean supper, I was on my feet for 5 hours on concrete. I couldn't hardly move Friday night and Saturday. But anyway, the sermon was finished last night at 11 o'clock. And I got tickled this morning at God. Because I got up plenty early, but I started making soup for Mike because he wanted some soup. Well, I had this cabbage, so I started making a cabbage casserole. I started cooking. I was just having an enjoyable moment, and I looked at the clock, and I thought, oh, I got to get around. So I had not printed my sermon yet. It was on my computer. And I went to print it. My cartridge was empty, so it wouldn't print. So I thought, okay, I'll email it to my work email, and I'll just go up to the office and print it there. So I start to email it, and it won't send. And I thought, okay, this is all right. Well, then it came up with, I needed my Windows password. Well, I didn't know what my Windows password was, you know. So I tried it again. So it looked like it sent, so I went to the office. It was not there. It was not on my computer. And so I come back, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, you know, you get this panic feeling. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And then I thought, oh, I'll just take my computer with me. I've never read about my computer, but I'm sure I could. I started to take it, and the computer says, low battery. I'm saying, okay, Lord, what is it you're trying to tell me? Well, I thought I plugged it in all night long. It was plugged in. Well, I went to the source. Mike had unplugged the cord from the socket, so it had not charged. So then I thought, okay. And then I remembered that my home email is linked to my cell phone. So I went to my cell phone, and I sent it from my cell phone to the office. I went to the office, and there it was. Of course, then I ran behind. I hadn't called Malia, and anyhow. And do you know that I'm talking about Job today? Have you ever heard the patience of Job?
Yeah.
I sat there for a minute. I said, okay, Lord, I know I've written about this. I've thought about it all week, but I really didn't take it to heart, did I? Because I was a little angry at Mike because it unplugged the cord. I was a little angry at myself because I waited so long at the last minute to procrastinate. And here's God saying, the patience of Job. And so, the mystery of God is truly in every little thing. And then coming to get Malia, I hit every stoplight green. It was just like, okay. And we made it on time, didn't we, Malia? God is good, people. He is, even in something so little, in my little 15, 20 minute of suffering this morning, he was there all the time. He is so good. He really is. And today we're going to talk about infinite mystery. There was a line at St. Peter's pearly gates, and in line was a preacher and a taxi cab driver. Now, as they reached the entrance, the taxi driver was assigned to a really nice room. It was really elegantly decorated, everything he needed, really beautiful. So the preacher gets to his room assignment, and it's an okay room, but it's definitely economy class. So he asked St. Peter, you know, I worked all my life for you, and Lord, this is the room I get? And the taxi driver, over there, he gets a fancy room with all the extras. Can I ask why? Oh, well, the room assignments are based on results. You see, while you preached, people slept. While he drove, people prayed. I always think humor is a little bit good here, but I hope I don't put you to sleep today. I hope that the Holy Spirit touches you with the scripture, with the story, with some shared thoughts, and you go away challenged. You go away feeling the presence of the Holy Spirit. You go away with worship and awe to the glory of the Lord on your heart and in your mind. At ALC, we've been focusing on Job. And I keep my sermons in a file, and I put who I spoke to where, because sometimes you can kind of reuse that sermon and not have to worry about like I did this week. There's not one sermon that I have ever done on the book of Job. And so I started fresh. And like I say, I like to read. I read other people's thoughts and ideas. I did not list everyone, but I've always said that I'm more of a facilitator than a speaker because I like to share other people's thoughts. But during that, it brings thoughts to your own mind. But I found myself as I was reading Job. Job has 42 chapters. But I found myself feeling the pain, feeling the compassion of friends, even if his friends had misplaced words and thoughts. Thinking about the faith that Job had. Now, if you've never read Job, he went through a lot. He was a righteous man. He lived good. He did what he was supposed to do. And he was rich. He lost all his cattle, his belongings. He lost all his children. He was in a lot of pain. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, he had sores. If you keep reading through all that, he was covered in sores, so it's physical pain he went through too. So he's suffering. And yet he is a righteous man. He believed in God, and he tried to be the best person that he thought God wanted him to be. But the bad things came. Job had asked God for help. Throughout these chapters, he was begging for help, but nothing changed, except maybe they got worse. He thought God was silent and didn't care for him. And today in our verse, chapter 38 is what we're talking about. Our worship help suggested verses 1 through 7 and 34 to 41. But in this chapter, out of a whirlwind, the voice of God comes. Then the Lord answered Job out of a whirlwind. Who is that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Who is obscuring my plan? Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you shall declare to me. You wanted a trial before me? So let's see how competent you are. Let's see if you can answer some simple questions. And in chapter 38, there are 39 questions. And in chapter 39, there are 20 more. So that wasn't questions, that was an interrogation. But they were nice. Where, who, what, when. When were you, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Mystery. Even man today can't settle the question of origin. It is debated, but man was not there to see it. Earth suspended between the various heavenly bodies in such a way that it moves in such an orderly procession. How? Light suddenly coming into being. Water expanding when it freezes, but other things contract. Mystery. Stars influence the season. There are great black holes that are mysterious. And in chapters 34, 41, can you lift up your voice to the clouds that a flood of waters may cover you? Can you send forth lightnings that make you and say to you, here we are? Who has put wisdom in the clouds or given understanding to the mist? Who can number the clouds by wisdom? Or who can tilt the water skins of the heaven when the dust runs into a mass and the clods cleave fast together? Can you hunt for prey for the lion, or satisfy the appetite of the young lions when they crouch in their dens or lay in wait for their comfort? Who provides for the raven its prey when its young ones cry to God and wonder about for lack of food? God takes the focus off Job's suffering, and he points to the wonder and of the universe and God's oversight over all creation. God humbles Job's perception of knowledge and control. I love 39:13-18. The wings of the ostrich wave proudly, but are they the pinions and the plumage of love? For she leaves her eggs to the earth and lets them be warmed on the ground, forgetting that a foot may crush them, that the wild beast may trample them. She deals cruelly with her young, as if they were not hers, though her labor be in vain. Yet she has no fear, because God has made her forget wisdom and given her no share in understanding. When she rouses herself to flee, she laughs at the horse and his rider. God just has to have a sense of humor. An ostrich can outrun a horse, and yet it is so stupid that it walks off and leaves its eggs right on the sand, in the open. It will not take care of its young. But God says, I like it that way. I made it that way. Mysteries are surrounding us every day. Mike and I took a road trip a few weeks ago. We did 4,800 miles in 10 days. It was awesome. I was awed each day. The beauty and the diversity of the creation that surrounds us, the canyons, the gorges, the waterfalls, rivers, lakes, the ocean. Oh, how majestic. Mountains, each and every state with mountains, but each and every state's mountains are different. Different shapes, different kind. It was just so beautiful. The geysers. I just found so much wonder and majesty. There were times I could only be silent as I looked out upon God's land. And other times I just gasped and smiled. I had no doubt that God is present and that he is in control. In Romans 1:20 it says, ever since the creation of the world, God's eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things that he has made. A full moon shining in the darkness. I love a full moon. The vastness of a starry night that causes you just to awe in wonderment, to think of how big the world is. Nature's order, a V-shaped flight of geese. I love watching geese fly. And one tires as a leader, another one comes up and takes its place. They work together, caring for each other. The mystery of love. Even among fear and hatred and cruelty, some share their lives in kindness and vulnerability to others. I read about a man, he was a doctor. And this man was in awe of God's creation. And he thought about his handiwork and how we can trust that the God who created all this has also the power to hold all of us together when things seem to be falling apart. He says, our loving Creator is also our sustainer. And he talked about laminin, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but laminin is a family of proteins that are an integral part of the structural scaffolding of basement membranes in almost every animal tissue. Wikipedia. Laminins are what hold us together. Literally. They are called adhesion molecules. They hold one cell of our bodies to the next cell. And guess what shape or form this protein is? A cross. It looks like a cross. A coincidence? I don't think so. Colossians 1:15-17 says, he is in the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, and he is in him that all things hold together. Faith is not knowing what the future holds, but knowing who holds the future. Life's mysteries are signs that something greater is in our midst. The very presence of mystery is God's way of rousing us to ask and to seek. We then can open ourselves to God, who is already seeking you. But we can be there. We will have that wanting to know. Job steadfastly refused to turn his back on God. He wanted to see God, and see him he did. But God doesn't just explain. God explodes. He asked Job what he thinks he is anyway. Who do you think you are? God did not need Job's or anybody else's advice on how to run the world. Job was humbled. He was humiliated. And he says, "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know." And I think sometimes we are that way. We want to know everything, but are we ready? Can you handle the answer? Sometimes, probably not. God knows what he's doing. What God said helped Job begin to understand that God had not ignored him or forgotten him. It helped him to understand that God was so much greater than he was, and that God's ways were beyond his ability to understand. God is always present, and God is an unending mystery. I found a little story, and it was Jane, who was so mad she was furious. And she says, "You're calling off the wedding just like that?" She yelled through the phone to her fiancé. "You don't think we're right for each other? Oh, I see. You might have mentioned that before my parents spent a fortune on my wedding dress." And in her anger and her frustration, she kept asking, "Why? Why?" She believed that she was hurt beyond repair. How could he do this with no warning? And then she thought, she just couldn't understand it. And she cried on her mom's shoulder, looking at the perfect wedding dress hanging high in the corner of her room. "God, how could you have let this happen?" Months passed, and the daintily pearled dress hung in the basement, a reminder of the perfect plan that had come apart at the seams. Then she met Rick. This was something that she had not expected at all. He was different, something she never experienced. She returned from their second date, somehow knowing that her dress would be worn. "Now, God, I see." Psalms 45 says, "Many, O Lord my God, are the wonders you have done." Sometimes we just don't get it, and sometimes we're not patient. Job 36:25 and 26. "All humanity has seen it. Mortals gaze on it from afar. How great is God, beyond our understanding. The number of his years is past finding out." God intended to teach Job something through his affliction. Rather than trying to correct the teacher, Job was to remember and to magnify God as the maker of all things. God allowed Job to get to the place where he could trust in God, even though his circumstances looked so hopeless. God delivered Job not from his sufferings, but through his sufferings. God wasn't testing Job's faith. He was refining his faith. Sometimes we have to be stripped of our attitude, our possessions, or shaken. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to be able to see what truly matters in this world. Job 19:26-27 says, After my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I myself will see him with my own eyes, I and not another. How my heart yearns within me. Sometimes when God is all a person has, then they learn that God is all they need. Romans 8:28 says, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. God never belittles humans. He sees people as creatures of worth and value, made in his image and precious enough to send Jesus to die for us. Even when we are in the depths of sin and rebellion, he's there. God comes to humanity by grace. His grace is a gift that people do not deserve, and they do not deserve to receive it. Yet it is given so freely. Even during Job's sufferings, God's grace was there. When Satan wanted to tempt and to test Job, it was God who limited the extent of Satan's attacks. That was grace. The eventual restoration of his fortunes were grace alone. And if you don't know the story of Job, at the end, after through all this suffering, he receives blessings. He has his wealth back, he has new children, he lives to be 140 years, I believe it said, and so he is blessed by God. He went through a lot, but he is blessed by God through grace and mercy. His prosperity that came was not a reward for Job's integrity and faith. You can't earn it. But it was a gift from God. Job was on a journey that took him through pain, suffering, trials, doubt. And through this, he saw God more clearly. He even discovered more things about himself clearer. It was sheer grace that brought him to a new, transformed view of God. In the book of Job, God challenges the idea that Job and his friends can ever understand God. Suffering, the expanse of the universe, what's going on. And God will continue to do whatever is right in God's eyes, not theirs. But God answered. He didn't leave them. He answered. No matter how small humankind is in the grand scheme, we are privileged to be in a relationship with the divine. It is to humankind that God spoke and continues to speak. It is humankind that God sent God's Son. It is we that have the privilege of glimpsing, even partially, the wonder and the glory of God with us. Job asked why, and that was not the right question for him or for us. In the beginning of my little story, the preacher asked, why? We cannot understand the why of God's acts, but we can choose how we respond to the circumstances. In difficult times, we can affirm God. We can trust him. Our faith can deepen and grow and know God lives in the question and the struggle. God cares for us and is with us. God understands the whys. We must deal with the hows of life, keeping God at the center of our life. I found a little short story about God working in mysterious ways. James Hogan was 16 years old, and he had no idea that God was about to intervene in his life. He had dropped out of school a few weeks earlier, and he had a job delivering pizza. He was described by his teachers and employees as a courteous, hard worker. James just couldn't seem to handle the pressures of adolescence. His life was going nowhere fast, despite the silent prayers of his mother. Always conscientious, he delivered pizzas hot from the oven until the day he saw the back of a Cadillac sinking into a small pond. The car was going fast down the hill, and there was an elderly man inside. Without hesitation, James slammed his delivery truck to a stop and he leaped into the water. Trapped inside was the Reverend Max Kelly. He was unconscious. James, standing on the back of the car, saw that the rear window had somehow opened, and he pulled the elderly man out and brought him to the shore. After the rescue, the police offered James a ride home. He declined, stating that he had his truck to drive and he had pizza to deliver. And just like his nature, he did ask that the policeman might radio the restaurant to notify the customers that their pizzas would be a little late and a little cold. In December of 1995, James Hogan was awarded the Carnegie Medal for Heroism, which included $2,500, a medal, and a scholarship. James says the incident has changed his life. Just 2 weeks before the accident, he had held a gun to his head, wanting to die. He wouldn't have been there to save Reverend's life had the gun not jammed. His mother's prayers answered. James back in school, taking extra classes to catch up with his classmates and practicing for the baseball team. A huge public outpouring of love and support have given him a renewed meaning and a purpose and a well-earned second chance. Infinite mystery. Limitless, without boundaries. Immensely great or large. God's mystery is around us each and every day. It is found in all that is. In the mystery, in the majesty of the universe, in the smallest creature, in our children, in joys and sorrows of everyday life. In the prayer of a mother, in the confusion of a team, in the community who love and support. We have a universe filled with mystery, so that our sense of wonder will be awakened and our desire to seek the source will be stirred. Mystery is itself a divine gift, and to honor that gift is to begin to honor the giver, the living God. Job affirms that God is not deaf to our cries and is in control of this world no matter how it looks. God's appearance caused Job's doubts to melt away. He learns that God cared about him and that God rules this world. And it was enough. In some ways, we are like him. All through our lives, we can learn more and more about God. But we will never understand everything about God. Even so, just like Job, we believe that God is here. He is with us. The fundamental fact of existence is that trust in God is a firm foundation that everything that makes life worth living. It's our handle on what we can't see. It's about faith and the mystery, the wonder and the awe of God. And that